The monastics are actually supposed to be just living the baptismal life to an extreme.
Right.
And
exactly.
so all of the baptized Christians, it's like, oh, this is what the life of baptism looks like.
The goal of the Christian life is martyrdom. You know, of just this whole gift of self to the Father in the Spirit, right in union with Jesus Christ. It's just like his life lived out in us is fully manifest in martyrdom.
It is hard to be contemplative in the world. Yeah. It's really hard. I couldn't do it. It's why, I'm in this vocation because I need this vocation.
The reason that you have friends that are religious is not because you're so holy, but because you'd go to hell if you didn't. It's because you're weak that I've given these people to you, not because you're strong.
I'm here to welcome you to the What God Is Not podcast, where you could join Father Michael O'Loughlin and my godmother, Mother Natalia.
Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to him forever.
Hi, Father Chris.
Hello, Mother Natalia.
You are not Father Michael.
Nope.
You have a lot more hair than him.
At least on my head, less here.
That's true. He's got, the beard is looking really good.
Yeah, no, it's a good look.
I forgot to move this back. Really sorry, everybody. This took just far longer to set up than I anticipated, which always happens, but more so with two people because I have to rearrange the whole room. It's not just setting up two stands. Your coffee is cold. Sorry about that.
It's lukewarm.
Spit
it out of my mouth.
Are you the type who drinks lukewarm coffee?
No.
I'm really sorry.
It's fine.
Oh.
I mean, right now I am. It's fine.
This is my fault.
I will drink scalding hot coffee so that I can finish it in time, before it gets to the lukewarm point.
Wow. That's not my life. I'll come back to my desk 6 hours into the day or something like that and see that there's still some coffee in my mug. And I'm like, oh, look at that. And I'll finish it. And,
no, can't do it.
Mother Gabrielle is horrified by it. She's more horrified that I do it with LaCroix. The next day, I'll be like,
and it's
there's
obviously
still
not bubbly anymore.
Yeah. And she's like, that's disgusting. And I'm like, now it's just water. I don't know. Why is that so disgusting? I'm just drinking water.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if you had a glass of water out just all day and it's just standing water and you just drink it the next day.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's wrong with that?
I don't know. There's something in me that's no, I wouldn't drink it either. But you're right. I can't actually articulate what would be wrong with it.
I wouldn't do it with a beer.
Well,
that's different. Beer, when it's lost the carbonation, is not.
Yeah, no. Not the same thing.
Great. Well, I'm glad we've had this talk. I feel really bad about the coffee. Here's the thing.
It's fine.
Here's the thing.
Totally fine.
No, here's why it's not fine, Father Chris. Here's why it's not fine. Because it would have been hotter, but I made it the way that I like it. So our poor audio engineers, I keep moving in and out of the mic. I'm also doing the thing that your mom and I approve of that you very much don't approve of, which is breaking the fourth wall. But I'm totally with your mom on this. Okay. I'm like, no, the audience is there. I'm going to talk to them. That's not...
Hello, Mom.
That's true. She listens to this. Hi, Johnny. When I make an Americano, I don't add boiling water because I don't like when it's too hot to drink it. So I add water that's only 165 so that I can drink it.
Sure. Which makes sense if you're going to drink, right?
If you're going to not then set up for 20 minutes and then drink it.
I'm not going to, you gave me coffee. I can't complain.
Maddie gave you coffee.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Right. I just boiled the tepid water. Didn't boil, to be more precise.
No, it's fine. This is...
I picked that mug for you.
Like it? Mother tenderness. Very nice. Yep.
Great. Well, I don't even know if we're going to make it a full hour. So I want to do not very long banter. Can you see how, okay, I think I see the timestamp. I'm doing I'm breaking the fourth wall way more than usual. I get really nervous when Father Michael's not here because he takes care of the things and I don't really have to, I don't press buttons and stuff like that. I'm just show up and smile and then record. So, and he's going to be really upset because of all this glare that's happening. My face is super shiny. Well, he just likes it to look nice. And like, he's like,
I look very nice. You look very nice too.
Wow. This happened the last time we recorded. You also, I thought it was Father Michael that brings it out in you, but maybe it's recording.
It could be.
Anyways, yeah, you do. You look very nice. Great. So anyways, let's just move into the topic. When I asked Father Chris what he wanted to record on, because this is one of those times where it's like, I didn't have you on as a guest because there's a particular topic that I wanted, but just because I needed to record an episode without Father Michael because our schedules didn't line up. And I knew you were going to be here.
Sure.
And you're one of my closest friends, and I want the whole world to know how amazing you are. So you came on and did a couple episodes with us on Lord of the Rings. And yeah. So anyways, when I asked Father Chris I should say who you are.
Sure.
Because some people haven't listened to the Lord of the Rings episodes. Father Chris, except the last time I tried to do this, I got everything wrong.
Yeah.
I know.
Like 17 minutes. Okay. It was great. It was great.
I'm already really self-conscious about it. So thank you for...
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
It's fine. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Now it's just awkward. I don't know. That was really... I enjoyed it. Father Chris, priest of Washington, spiritual director at John Paul II Seminary. Got to know your...
The head of spiritual formation.
Yeah, coordinator of spiritual formation at JP2. I got to know your community because I was on a 30-day retreat with Mother Cecilia and Mother Gabriella. And then I tried to make a retreat here, which got canceled. And this is terrible. I keep giving you grief. I
accidentally canceled his retreat, basically.
But it worked out well because I was in a better place to come visit the next year. And then I got to meet you, which was a lot of fun. And then I've been here a couple times since then.
Great. And Father Chris, like I said, he came on and he's very much a Lord of the Rings expert.
Thank you. Very kind.
And
to not use the word my mom likes to use.
Fanatic?
No, she uses nerd. But fanatic would also be accurate.
Also nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expert. I like that.
Yeah. And so he recorded a couple episodes on that. And then we had your mom on talking about suffering in particular and praying through our suffering. And that was really beautiful. We had a listener send a really beautiful email about it that I need to pass on to your mom that I've forgotten to do. So, and when I asked what you wanted to talk about this time, the first thing that came to mind, was it the first thing that came to mind?
I think so.
Was talking about monastics being a reference point for the baptized. So I want to start by sharing... Can I start by sharing the Orientale Lumen
that's great.
passage? And then you can talk about why you wanted to talk about this.
Okay.
So this is from Orientale Lumen, which is an apostolic letter by JP2, written in, I should know this, but I don't. I should look at the end. Oh, it's actually at the beginning. What?
No.
Usually the thing, like, it's at the very end.
Right, it's like,
it's
that's
right here. 1995.
Very surprising.
Yeah. So anyways, this apostolic letter is in large part why our community started. Like, we started our monastery in response to St. John Paul II's call for a revitalization of Eastern Catholic monasteries. So
before you do that, I saw it was May 2nd that it came out. Do you have the same feast on that day as we have? I think that's Athanasius for us.
According to this bit at the top of Orientale Lumen. It's from the Vatican on May 2nd, which is the liturgical memorial of St. Athanasius, Bishop and Doctor of the Church. But I don't know if he's on our calendar for May 2nd.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But you are correct that it's...
Yeah, I just didn't know if that was one of the ones that was...
It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for
nice
calling out my ignorance in the middle of recording.
Did not mean to do that.
I always appreciate when Father Michael does that. I do it to him too. It's never on purpose though. I'm like, where is this in scripture? And he's like, what? I can just admit that I don't know. Okay. So he has a whole bit about monasticism as a model of baptismal life, and specifically the reference point, which I talk about often on this podcast about monastics being the reference point. But he says, moreover, in the East, monasticism was not seen merely as a separate condition, proper to a precise category of Christians, but rather as a reference point for all the baptized, according to the gifts offered to each by the Lord. It was presented as a symbolic synthesis of Christianity. So, why don't you tell us why this topic came to mind? And whatever thoughts you have to share.
Sure. Well, I think it recently came to mind actually just because of the gospel right before. So in our calendar, the gospel on Friday before Holy Week begins.
Father Chris is Roman Catholic. I don't know if we said that at any point.
I said it was priest of Washington, but
okay.
Yeah, so Roman Catholic. Yeah, so in the Roman Church, so the gospel on the Friday before Holy Week is about Jesus going off across the Jordan to the place where John first baptized, right? And so the church sort of goes out with Jesus to just kind of prepare ourselves for entrance into Holy Week. And it made me think of your community, right? You have the Great Fast, and then Palm Sunday and the Saturday before that weekend is almost like a come up for a little breather. Mm-hmm. And then like Holy Week, you just plunge into the fasting and everything. And it just made me think of like, so in my understanding, at least, so my brother is Melkite, and my understanding from him is almost like, this is what the monastics do. They have this intense fast, and then, right, the weekend, and then another intense fast and everything. And then everybody else in the church uses that as, okay, how do I live this out? So you're kind of living this, and then we look at that at the monasticism to say, okay, how do I, in my own state in life, in my own way of living, how do I live that? And maybe also just being here this week, so it's Holy Week right now, and just seeing your liturgies and everything, it's just so, there's so much richness on Holy Thursday, Good Friday, like there's things that in the Roman Church we don't have a lot of, and we have like Stations of the Cross, we have these practices and stuff, but
yeah, you have things that we don't have.
Right, exactly. But looking at your calendar, looking at the different liturgical celebrations, especially what you're able to do here in the monastic community is really like plunges you into the mystery into the Paschal mystery, right? And I don't know, there's something about looking to you all that for me is hopeful of just like grounding me in the liturgical life and consequently to the life of Christ lived out in the church. So that's kind of what made me think about it. There's a few other things that just from my own life I find helpful, but maybe we can get to those later. But I don't know, is that an accurate understanding of you all as a reference point, of monasticism as a reference point?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think that's one aspect of it. Okay. is this concept of living liturgically, right? Because it's also, it's the richness of the liturgy, but it's also the way that our life is structured. Like we pause throughout the day to go back to the chapel to pray and things like that.
Right.
And so the structure of it is also meant to be a reference point, to remind the lay people that this is how you should be living your life as well, is you should be pausing throughout the day, calling the Lord to mind, making sure that you're, this is Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection, practicing the presence of God. So I think that's part of it is, again, just the structure of it, but there's also, the intensity and inviting people to live liturgically, basically, and to dive into the mystery of the liturgical season. And I think, and this is part of the beauty of having a liturgical season, of having the liturgical year, because the church in her wisdom knows that we need change. We need things we need to come back to things each year and to kind of dive deep.
Yeah. Well, and it actually, so one of the things that I tell our guys at the seminary all the time, right, that like the goal of the Christian life is martyrdom, of just this whole gift of self to the Father in the Spirit, right in union with Jesus Christ. It's just like his life lived out in us is fully manifested martyrdom. And so in the early church, you were able to do this quite easily because there's like lots of persecutions. And then when the persecutions lessened, that's really when you get an increase, like a strong increase historically in monastic life. You have, people fleeing to the desert because like we don't want to lose this intensity, right? This intensity of the Christian life that's lived out in this way. And so thinking of you all as a reference point is like, this is the goal of the Christian life is this intensity of life in Jesus Christ. It's just really helpful. And yeah, again, that happens especially in the liturgy, but also the way that you live through your vows and these different things really helps us remember just where we're headed.
Yeah, I had a little boy who's 6 ask me yesterday why I wear black all the time, and I was like, oh, what do I say to the 6-year-old? That's not morbid, because it's not morbid. No, it's beautiful, sure. But what do I say to the 6-year-old? And yeah, anyways, I ultimately got to telling him that it's to remember our death. But I talked about how did I phrase it? I was like, well, when at the end of our life, where do we all want to go? Like, if we all want to be saints, where do we want to go? And he said, heaven. And I was like, yeah. So this is to remind us that our hope is one day to die and go to heaven. I don't know if that was, yeah.
Well, and then one of your sisters mentioned that like the right response to a 6-year-old boy who's asking that question is that you want to be Batman.
Right. Except then one of the other nuns pointed out that like not, or maybe it was you that was like, and then the little boy's going to want to be a nun.
That's right. Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah. We had this funny experience. So in most of the world, I feel like people are a lot more familiar, Catholics at least, are a lot more familiar with like monks than they are with nuns. Maybe like active religious sisters, but nuns in particular. Yeah. Or even people in the world are more familiar with priests than they are with nuns. Like you see a lot more priests. And so, but we have this strange situation where like there's a bunch of families who live in the area. Like you saw a couple of them here yesterday. And there are families who live in the area who are very familiar with the monastery. And so like all they know are nuns. And they have no experience of monks.
Interesting, sure.
And so often when someone will ask me like, well, if Byzantine priests can be married, can Byzantine nuns be married? And I explain like, no, because nuns aren't like the female equivalent of priests. They're the female equivalent of monks. And the monks cannot be married. But this little kid asked us a few years ago. She was, which one was it? So she was probably like 4. And someone said something about monks, and she's asking me, she's like, what are monks? Because she's only familiar with the nuns.
Sure.
And I was like, so I tried to do the same thing, but kind of reverse. And I was like, well, because usually I say like, well, the nuns are like, we're like girl monks. And so I was like, monks are like, they're like boy nuns. And I was like, it doesn't work that way.
No.
It's weirder that way.
Yeah,
I don't. Anyways, so if he wants to dress up like Batman, he can be a monk, not a nun.
Yeah. Nuns with beards.
Nuns with beards. That's maybe still wrong.
No.
Yeah.
But okay, so maybe tying that into like monastic life as a reference point, but
You're so
your
good.
community in particular, this is one thing that in my priesthood has been such a gift for me, is the presence of monastics in my life. So I remember when I was, probably maybe a deacon or a newly ordained priest, and having a conversation with someone, and he was asking like, okay, so like, when you're out in public, are you going to wear your collar normally? Or are you going to wear lay clothes? Like what, and there's times when
I like the hoodie over the cassock look. Very classic.
yeah. Anyway, it's comfortable. So, there's times when it makes sense, right, to wear lay clothes. Obviously, if a priest is working out or different things. But I was like, for the most part, like, I'm just going to wear my collar. I'm going to wear my clerics. And what I told him, I was like, the only reason I'm not a monk, the only reason I'm not in a monastery is because I'm convinced the Lord wants me to be out in the world to bring people into communion with him. Like getting this from just really both of my parents, but especially my dad. My dad's a secular Carmelite. So he has such a monastic heart and such a contemplative heart. And I just, kind of caught that from him, like a disease. No, but I remember when he was diving into it, I started reading Teresa of Avila. I started reading Carmelite writings. I was like, this is where I'm at home. And so when I entered seminary, it was very quick, very last minute, was not expecting it. And so all my roommates from college were like, all right, well, the only question is he going Carmelite or is he going diocesan? So this has always been there. And so when I was a newly ordained priest, I was like, no, the only reason I'm not in a monastery is because I'm supposed to be out in the world. But it's a real poverty to be out in the world. So Gregory the Great has this wonderful homily, and it might be it's one of my favorite office of readings that we have in our liturgy. It's this homily where he's like, when I was in the monastery, I was so diligent about the use of what I would talk about, the use of my tongue, the what I would give my time to. And he says, now that I'm the Pope, I find myself not only engaging in, but enjoying things that I would have avoided as a monk. But he says, I'm doing this all for love of the Lord, and it's like, and obviously, okay, like, that's not to say, oh, well, we should just get involved and, great, become worldly, it's fine. But it's this stretching of the heart that just takes place. And so I want to be in a monastery, but I also want to be in the world. And the Lord, I think, has put me in the world. And so the presence of monastics in my life has been such a gift to kind of keep my heart true to itself and true to just being a contemplative in the world. And in a particular way, women monastics have been a real gift because they've attuned me, and I'm not just saying this because I'm at your monastery, but they've attuned me to the heart of Christ the bridegroom in a way that I don't think I would have been otherwise. All the guys at the seminary know this, like in my homilies, there's just this awareness of Christ's heart for the bride. And I know that has been cultivated within me through my friendship with women religious. And so, again, for me, kind of as a personal reference point, to almost like when you go into your Pustinia, you know, when and knowing that you're there, and it's like, okay, wait, right, like I need to be in the desert. Like I need to make sure that I'm spending this time in intimacy with the Lord. And it's just such a gift for me to stay true to who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and that's interesting because in your mom's book, Pain of Grace, she talks about, I reminded you of this. But she says that when she prayed about your vocation when you were a kid, she said something along the lines of, Lord, if you're calling him to be a priest, really help him to fall in love with the bride, with the church. And so I think that's also really been fostered by the prayers of your mom.
If mom's praying for you, like,
watch out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We had a situation back home, and it was just like really struggling. So I asked, this is kind of an aside, but I asked my mom to pray for about it. And like the next day it was resolved. And so the priest was like, why did you not go to your mom earlier? Her prayers are good prayers.
Yeah.
So,
and you can hear why in listening to the episode with her, of just why they're so powerful. Praying with your body is what we called that one, I think. And yeah, but there's something else I was going to say about, oh dear.
Being out in the world.
Yes, thank you. So because you reminded me of a line, one of my favorite troparias is, which is one of the hymns that we sing during liturgy and at matins and vespers and things, but is for a bishop martyr. And because traditionally, do you know this line? Do you know where I'm going with this? Okay. Because traditionally, our bishops have come from the monasteries. And I think, I would like to think that's because we've wanted prayerful bishops who are close to the Lord. I think there's also the practical aspect of it.
They were the celibates.
They were the celibates,
right.
Yeah. So most of our parish priests were married, and our bishops have to be celibate. And so they would take the bishops from the monasteries, usually kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of this when you were talking about the Gregory the Great homily. Was it a homily? And I think this line, I need to write to Bishop Barden and share this with him, because this line often comes on my heart when I'm reading his works that he's written as bishop, or his talks or whatever, is like the bishops don't want to leave the monastery for this reason of the homily of Gregory the Great, and for everything you're describing of the difficulty of being in the world and why it's a poverty. Like, it is hard to be contemplative in the world. It's really hard. I couldn't do it. It's why, I'm in this vocation because I need this vocation. And it's like the first time I went on home visit after being in the monastery, I went on home visit for like a week, and then I was like, I didn't pray for a week. I pray for hours a day. How did I just not pray for a week? And it was bad. So I need the monastery. But I do pray when I go on home visit now. I've learned how. But and my parents are super supportive of that, which is really helpful. They're always like, have you had your hour yet? And they're just so good. But anyways, this line in the Tropar for a Bishop Martyr is, you found access to contemplation in the active life. And I love that line so much, because it really is, because, we talk about, people are like, well, it's not the exterior silence that matters. It's the interior silence. And like, that's what you really need to achieve. And so you don't, things can be going on all around, and it's just the interior stuff. And that's true. But like, how do you get to that point?
Right. We're also embodied.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it is, it's a gift that I have not yet acquired, but finding access to contemplation in the active life. I guess a little bit that's like things like the podcast and
Right.
are something of an active life for me.
And even having a phone, you know, I know like in your community, like there's that, and you all have to keep that distance, right? And because it's like, this is going to be, and so
Yeah, this is really humbling, but I had a conversation with Mother Cecilia recently. So we have like our shared communal phones, but we really have ones that are like assigned to us for our, like, because as vocation director or even doing this podcast with Father Michael and things like that, I often will have to just text him and be like, I'm running 10 minutes late or whatever. But the phones all have email on them for like the community email. And I had to have a conversation with Mother Cecilia recently and just say, I need to admit my weakness here, and this is really humbling, but I need to say I can't have email on the phone. Because if it's there, if I'm sitting in a doctor's office, I will check email and and it's like, I need to remember. Yeah. I mean, I've done episodes before on just the struggle of always feeling like we need to be efficient and always feeling like we need to be productive. And that's one of the places that I think the monastics need to be a reference point, right?
Yeah,
it's like, this isn't the point of our life. The point of our life is not to do more things. Right. The point of our life is to learn to be in the moment, because that's what we want for eternity is to be. Yeah. And, but that's, so I'm like, I'm failing in that witness as a monastic when all of the other people in this waiting room are seeing me on the phone. And it's not, and I don't mean that as a judgment for, like, for instance, I know some of the nuns need to do that because they're so overwhelmed with like appointments and things like that this is the only time they have to do any actual work. So I don't mean this as a judgment of people who are emailing in the waiting room, but I don't need that. And it's actually not good for me. Yeah. And because for me, it's coming from a place of like feeling like I need to be constantly productive. Like I can't just sit there and pray because that wouldn't be useful, right?
Yeah, or just be.
Yeah.
And this is like the evangelical witness of not going on your phone to just remind us like, no, you don't belong to this world. So one of my, can I quote Joseph Pieper? Like,
yes, except let me just say this that I just thought of, because people will often come up to me and talk to me when I'm in public because of my habit.
Of course.
Which is beautiful. And sometimes, people are just like, they'll just share everything from their heart and they're weeping. And it's like so beautiful, which is one of my favorite reasons for wearing a habit. But how many people haven't approached me because I was on the phone?
Right. I know. Yeah.
Which is actually something that I need to like, repent for. Yeah.
And that's, we all, right. I'm saying, because I'm like, yes, I know this. I'm like, yeah, mother, come on. No, it's the same for me.
They actually didn't approach you because they saw that you were drinking lukewarm coffee and they were that's disgusting.
Like, what is wrong with you? Okay. So one of my favorite Pieper quotes. So Pieper, for listeners, I wrote my dissertation on Joseph Pieper. So I'm a huge fan. He has this line about a church building. He says, like, what is a church? And he says, the more the absolutist claim of what is merely utilitarian threatens to confiscate our entire existence, the more it is necessary for the human being, if he is going to live a genuinely humane life, to step away occasionally from this tumult of sights and sounds. Buy this, drink that, eat those, amuse yourself here, demonstrate for or against, away from this unremitting experience of being screamed at, and emerge in a place where silence prevails, and thus real hearing becomes possible, listening to that reality upon which our existence rests, and from which it is continually nourished and renewed.
Your brain is amazing.
So like
that all just was like, there's no paper here. That just was his brain. That's amazing.
But it's so poetic, so it's kind of easier to memorize,
Sure. I don't have any poems memorized, but sure. Great. Roses are red, whatever.
So, no, but like that in terms of the reference point, right? The church, this is what the church is supposed to be for the world, right? Like, step away from this tumult of sights and sounds, from this unremitting experience of being screamed at. don't be confined to the utilitarian world, right? And so this is what the church is supposed to be. And monastics are such a reminder of this, such a healing reminder in our world of like, oh, I'm more than my productivity, right? I'm the value of my life is based on my receptivity to divine life. So very Marian in that regard, right? And so just the importance of monastics, especially in our world. And this is another thing. You mentioned just being a monastic, and you're a monastic because of your weakness in a certain sense. And
not certain, just 100%. Only reason. The Lord was like, you need this.
Or else you're going to like not make it.
I mean, really.
And I know for me, like this was something that the Lord kind of shared with me a few days ago of like, he was like, Chris, the reason that you have friends that are religious is not because you're so holy, but because you'd go to hell if you didn't. Like, it's because you're weak that I've given these people to you, not because you're strong. And it was just a helpful reminder for me of like, oh yeah, like I'm so weak and I know I will be immersed in the world. Like, and in an unhealthy way, not in like a way that I'm actually able to enjoy things the way that God intends them to be enjoyed. Like I would just grasp and so the Lord doesn't want me to go to hell. And so has given me friends and witnesses and reference points to keep my heart in his so that I can stay true to my vocation, to my life as a Christian first and foremost.
And yeah, and it's important. I don't know how to connect this, but I thought it as you were speaking. It's important for the monastics, but also just the clergy, sorry, for the monastics and the clergy to keep their heart in the Lord's and to keep their gaze on him, first and foremost for their own sake. Actually, I'll say that as an aside and then come back to that point, for their own sake. I've been abundantly clear on this podcast. We recorded an episode that I might have called The Sign of Uselessness. I don't remember what I called it, but it's this article that was written by a Carmelite, actually, I think, about the uselessness of monasticism. Because even as nuns, we can be tempted when people say, but what do you do?
Yes.
It can be very tempting to then list, like, to say that, there's the podcast, and sometimes we have girls' camp, and we host retreats, and people come to pray with us and have dinner with us. And even that is like, it's this temptation to... to
almost justify your existence.
Yes, exactly. And even... even for and I said this on that podcast, but I think this is a really important point. We even try to do this by saying we pray for the world.
Yes.
Like, because even good Catholics, they can at least justify donating to this. They can at least justify supporting this because there's at least this spiritual thing that we're giving.
Right. There's a spiritual utility.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so it's still utility. Yes. And so I've started saying to people, like, we've had some people here recently who they're like, well, but what's your mission here at the monastery? And I just say, my salvation. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, sure. But like, what do you like for the community and and it's like, all of that is only overflow.
Yes.
I am here not to pray for the world. I am here not to even provide spiritual direction. I'm here because I need this life for my salvation, because the Lord has made that clear to me. And I'm here to continue to grow in my relationship with him, to become more and more in union with him. Yeah. From that naturally flows prayer for the world and spiritual direction and the podcast, but that's not the point of my monastic life.
And it, like, to satisfy the thirst of our Lord, who, like, I mean, this is, you see it with Fotina, right? Like, asking for a drink of water. He's thirsting for her faith. He's thirsting for this response of someone who's acknowledged him as the bridegroom of her soul, right? And like, so as you're speaking, I was thinking of Mary of Bethany and just the pouring out of the nard, and Judas is the one who said, "What's the value of this? Like, what's the utility? We could have,
Yes.
And Jesus is like, no, there's no utility here. Like, it's just this pouring out, which is the right response to my presence. So sorry to cut you off, but it just, I think that was, it just came to me as you were speaking of thinking of Mary of Bethany as really a model for the non-practicality of monastic life.
And that's interesting that you say that, because last night at Pre-Sanctified, when we had that reading, which Father Sorsha was so fiery about, which is great. But when we had that reading, I almost just started crying for this very reason. I was like, that extravagance, this is my whole life.
Yes.
And like, I could have had an engineering job and been married and had kids, and that would have been a beautiful life. And so to the world, this looks like a waste. It looks like, which was said to me by some of my coworkers when I entered in words that I can't use on this podcast. So that's interesting. I was just thinking that last night. Anyways, I want to finish because that whole for your own sake was an aside, right?
Yep.
So we're back to the monastics and the clergy, keeping our heart in the Lord's, keeping our gaze fixed on Him. We need to do that first and foremost for our own sake, but also for the sake of the people who are coming to us, the people that we're encountering. Because if we're only like doing, which order do I want to say this in? Okay, so there is something to be said for being approachable to people, right? And that's what a lot of priests and religious, and I've done this as well, will use to kind of justify themselves not having to change. Like, well, I cuss, I drink too much, I do this, that, or the other, but it like makes people feel comfortable around me because they can relate and they don't feel like I'm just this otherworldly thing. And you see this, I see this with anyways. And it's disheartening because people do feel like they can relate to you more. That is a truth. But they're not being called on to something. And actually our vocation is other, right? That's what the word holy means. Right. Holy means set apart. Like we are supposed to be set apart from the world, not just living as you would live in the world. And, but the reason I say the part about keeping our heart in the Lord's and keeping our gaze on Him is because if we're only doing the actions of like, we're not cussing and we're not drinking and we're not doing all of these things, and we don't have our heart in His, then there's nothing attractive about that, actually. And you are going to feel like people are going to think that you're self-righteous and you're not going to be approachable and you're not going to, but I'm thinking of just really holy and beautiful people that I know that don't cuss, that don't, Father Chris Seith, that don't, but that have this like magnetism that are attractive because their heart is in the Lord's. Right. So it's like, we can't just do the things and also not have our heart in the Lord's, or that's not going to attract anybody. No. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So one, like if we don't do that, if we try to become too attracted to the world, we're depriving the world of like what we actually have to offer them, which is God, right? I mean, this is why like Jesus came into the world eminently relatable, very human, had friends, right? Was able to become friends with a tax collector and his friends, like clearly relatable. But also all he had to offer was God, right? And if we're not giving that to people, like, what are we doing? But also to your point of like, if we're just putting on the externals, that's not going to be attractive because, what did I want to say about this?
Sorry.
No. The externals, the only reason to give up good externals. So I'm not talking about like cussing or, something, but like good externals that we give up. The only reason to give those up is
like marriage,
for example, like, really good, and like the only reason to actually give that up, that's not a suppression or an avoidance or anything, is if there's a greater good that has drawn someone. And if they can't see that, and so that the person whose heart is not in God, but still gives up these things, he still wants those things. And so it's almost like he's going without God and without the goods of the world, and he's just miserable.
Yeah.
And you can see that. You can tell. But on the flip side, like you said, you can tell when someone is captivated by God and has given himself or herself to him entirely. I mean, that's really attractive.
It reminds me of the first time that I decided to discern my vocation. You haven't even heard my vocation.
No, I know. I still need to.
Maybe on the way to the
because I refused to. Yeah, that'd be good. That's good.
So the first time that I started discerning, it was just coming from a place of like, well, I'm a good Catholic now, and this is what like all the Catholics do is they discern, but I don't really know what that means. And so I went on a dating fast, and I was like, I'm going to go on a dating fast for 3 months, which sounds like not a long time, but for me, it was a really long time. It was really, really hard. But in those 3 months, when I tell my vocation story, I use this concept of, like we can't just give up a good without seeking a greater good or without being open to a greater good. Right. And so in that time, I wasn't talking with communities. I wasn't praying about my vocation. I was just not dating. This was the extent of my discernment. And so it's like, I stopped doing this thing that I really enjoyed and replaced it with
I bet that didn't
nothing.
Work.
So a month into it, I meet a guy and I'm like, exactly. I was like, I'm attracted to men. Clearly, I'm not supposed to be a nun. And so I just threw that out the window. And I was like, dating fast over a month in. Because, there was nothing, like, there was no greater good that, And, and I think I thought of this just because you were talking about Jesus and his humanity. This is my people have heard this rant from me a lot, but this is my biggest frustration regarding precision of language when we sin and then say, I was just being human. Like, okay, I was being human in a fallen world, in a broken world, in my broken humanity, my fallen humanity, fine. But I don't like when we just say that. And even very famous theologians will say it, even like some of the fathers and stuff, but they, with the implicit broken humanity, fallen humanity. But when we don't do that, and I try to be really precise in that language, I'm not always, because I also have fallen into that trap of speech, but Jesus was fully human. He was fully man. And so if that's the case, if it's like, well, I'm a priest, but I cuss around people because I want them to know that I'm human. Right. Like,
what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, do we not actually think that like beauty of language is a human capacity?
Right.
There's something, and
I'm going to give a hot take here.
Good.
Because I'm not actually saying that cussing is objectively wrong. And I want to be clear about that because it kind of sounds like that's what I'm saying.
Sure.
But I think that we need to be intentional in our speech. And like, I realized this. I used to cuss a lot. I'm just going to be really honest about that. I used to cuss a lot. And then there were times, and then I realized I would cuss without meaning to. Like, not just you drop something on your foot. That's a different situation. But like in a sentence or something. And I was like, that's not okay. Because there's something involuntary there. And I don't want anything that I'm doing to be involuntary. I want my language to be intentional. I want, and so there might be times in spiritual direction where I will use a cuss word with Father Michael because I'm like, this is the only word that I can think of that actually articulates what I'm trying to say in this moment.
Right. And that's
I can't think of a better word.
Like there's in our language, we have cuss words that are, this is kind of an aside, but like, we can actually tie it back to monastic life of just, right, all of this is supposed to be flowing from, the externals flow from this internal relationship with the Lord, including our language. And so like, it's different. Like blasphemy is just blasphemy and it's bad, right?
Yeah.
So GD is always, but there are words that is like, this actually articulates what I want to say.
Yeah. So I do think, I guess I just want to be clear about that but I do know priests or nuns who will cuss for the sake of people feeling more comfortable around them, or at least that's what they say. And I just don't think that's
no
acceptable.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Is that a hot take? I don't know.
I think what's a hot take is me saying that I don't think cussing is objectively wrong.
Oh, that's the hot take. Okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of Catholics
that's
would
definitely
say,
a whole
right. So
that's a whole podcast episode.
I don't know how Johnny feels about this. I'm a little bit nervous for when this comes out and how anyways. Okay, we'll just keep going.
What did you make me think of though?
I don't know what I made you think of. When I said that.
Oh, well, just going back to like sin, right? And being human. If sin were not in some way inhuman, it wouldn't be sin. Like the reason it's sin is because it's against who we are, right? And so whether it's the words that we use or the actions that we perform, like sin is always a deprivation of what it means to be human, because it also, to be human means to be in relationship with God. Like, if I am not communicating God in my actions and words, I'm not being fully human.
Who was it? Oh, shoot. I don't have a Bible. I feel like it was Father Michael that was talking about this in the sheep and the goats, Matthew 25. I've never noticed this before. I really hope this is correct because I'm saying it now on a podcast.
Here we go.
When he talks about where the sheep will go, he says the place that has been prepared for you. But then when he talks about the goats, he says the place that has been prepared.
The devil and his angels.
Yeah, for the devil and his angels. Yeah. Like, that's not what I've just never noticed that distinction. Yeah. And so it's not like he's saying this is the place that's been prepared for those of you who are good. This is the place that's been prepared for those of you who are bad. Right. He's saying this is the place that's prepared for you, all of you. This is the place that's prepared for the devil and his angels, where you will go if you don't go to the place that's actually prepared for you. Right. Like, because sin is not actually human.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Anyways. Why is that funny?
No, I think it was more your expression afterwards.
Yeah. Someone told me, I don't remember who, maybe it was Father Michael, that whenever it freezes, it's always on like a really funny face or something. Or I think they have a really hard time getting thumbnails for me on the from the recordings because I'm like always doing something weird with my face, but it's fine. They'll find a good one. Bree's,
I'm sure.
Bree's great at that too. Okay, I did not realize what time it was. We could talk for a few more minutes. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I don't think so.
I want to say one thing about why monastics are a reference point.
Okay, good, please.
Or why St. John Paul II talks about this and says that we're supposed to be a reference point for all the baptized is because the monastics are actually supposed to be just living the baptismal life to an extreme.
Right,
And
exactly.
so all of the baptized Christians, it's like, oh, this is what the life of baptism looks like. You know, we've talked, some of my favorite episodes that we've done are the episodes on my life profession or on the life profession service. And I'm just like sharing, I think it's 3 or 4 parts. And I'm just sharing reflections from the life profession service. And in that we talk about how much baptismal imagery there is because we as Catholics believe in one baptism, of course, However, in the East, we still believe in one baptism.
I'm sure.
But,
I was not worried about that.
A monastic profession is seen as like the closest you can get to a second baptism.
Sure.
So we wear white, we make 3 prostrations symbolic of the 3 dunks in baptism. We, all of the. So we receive a candle. The nuns who still had their baptismal candles use their baptismal candles for the life profession service. So anyways, the reason we're called to be a reference point for the baptized Christians is because we're just trying to live the most extreme that we can.
There's an intensity
of the baptism. Yeah.
And a visibility of like what it's supposed to look like. No, it's so beautiful. It's fun. I mean, in the liturgy, for one thing that I've noticed is, at least in the Latin rite, how much Mass of Christian burial, how much that in some ways parallels the baptismal liturgy, which I love. It's a similar sort of thing where it's just like you are entering into the fullness of what took place at baptism. Like you only really fulfill what happened at your baptism when you die, when you completely surrender your life to the Father in the Holy Spirit in you, Jesus Christ, right? And we get foretastes of this. Obviously, every time we receive communion, this is what we're doing. We're uniting ourselves to Jesus in his own surrender to the Father and the Spirit. But in a certain like middle point between baptism and death, you have monastic life. So you wear black because like you're dead, you know?
Yeah.
Your life is hidden with Christ and God, right? Colossians.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Well, we need to wrap up, but
thank you for your vocation. Yeah.
Thank you for yours. We're recording on Great and Holy Thursday, which is, at least in the West, very much a celebration of priesthood and the Eucharist. And so thank you for your vocation.
Absolutely.
So, okay. We are on all the platforms, I think. And I do a really bad job of this, and but I'm just trying anyways. We have a website, whatgodisnot.com, and an email address, whatgodisnotpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to email, I will respond in 6 to 8 months. And we have a nonprofit called Fotina. She got a shout out in today's episode. And that money goes towards supporting this podcast and supporting things like our pilgrimage, but also our Matthew 25 ministry, helping the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the ill, the imprisoned. And actually we have a friend who is in prison right now, and we're able to send him some spiritual reading that he's been wanting. That's been really beautiful. So thanks to your donations. And also it goes towards tithing towards our eparchy, to the monastery, to Father Michael's eparchy and parish, and then to supporting other Christian evangelization projects. We helped get some lighting equipment for Father Chris's podcast with his mom, which is called Core Ed Core with Mother and Father, which is very delightful. I just emailed your mom to ask her what I have to do to get her to release them more frequently.
She told me.
Well, she didn't respond to me, so I probably should not have said that on the podcast. Sorry. And so if you would like to support Fotina, you can do that at our website, fotina.org. That's photina.org, or through Patreon. And we're on Goodreads and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. I don't have any of those things myself. But great. I think that's everything.
Great.
If this episode was helpful for you, or any episode is helpful and you think that it would be helpful for someone else, then please share it. I think that's everything. Okay, prayer intentions. I will ask, just since we talked about baptism a lot at the end, I would like to ask for prayers for Angelo, Angeli, and Cosmo, who are my 3 godchildren.
I'll ask for prayers, obviously, for all the monastics and religious whom I know. And also for my soon-to-be-born godson as of this recording, but after it's released, my brother and sister-in-law are expecting, but he'll be born through C-section next Wednesday, April 23rd. And he's got a lot of health issues, and so we're not expecting him to live. So just prayers for the family as we process that just that experience. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Father, can you give us a blessing?
Absolutely. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
May Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Go in peace.
Thanks be to God. Thank you.
Thanks,
Love you.
Father. Love you too.